is an award-winning microbiologist and immunologist, Dr. Swinburne Augustine. Thank you for joining us today on Untapped Potential.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes,
Simone?
yes, certainly. So you're from Dominica, and just tell us a little bit more about you.
There's so much to say.
There is so much.
I'm from from Dalis in the east of the island. I remember growing up, going to town, they used to call us Jean Auvin.
Okay.
Say nous do bon Dieu. But
you're behind God's back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think like every village in Dominica, I think it took the whole village to raise us. I grew up with my grandparents, Aaron and Severine Augustine, but my uncles, aunts, and the people in the village, they're the ones who really looked out for us. So
So what was life like growing up in the village?
Man, I don't know how to put it, but I think at that time it was the best a kid could have growing up, you know? We made our own toys. We really never thought of wealth or being rich in material terms, you know? We were very creative, made our own toys. We ran around with our sacks. We made our tops. We, made our kites. Some of them even tried making bicycles with wooden wheels. But I mean, it's all part of that creativity that we got. And I think that has helped me a whole lot navigating through life and knowing that no matter what kind of issues or problems that I can come up against, I've already been prepared for it just by growing up in Dalis or in Dominica.
So you would say you guys were very industrious at an early age.
Yeah.
So did you guys do any farming? Was your family a part of farming?
Yes. We did a lot of farming. As a matter of fact, my grandparents had the only meal. A lot of the farin and toloma that people ate in Dominica didn't know it came from. Yeah, it came from my grandparents' meal. My grandfather had that meal right behind our kitchen. So most of the villages around Dalis, that's where they came to process their farin and toloma.
Now you said you grew up with your grandparents. Can I ask why did you not grow up with your parents?
Well, my dad had moved to Toronto to study and stayed there. My mom was in town working. So my grandparents, after a lot, they had about 13 kids. After their kids grew up and started to make their way through life, they took almost all of us grandkids. And it may probably for good reason, because they had a lot of land. So we had to help with, grazing cattle, growing stuff, and carrying stuff.
And that speaks so well for the concept of it takes a village, because in the same way, and I think we found that more in the past in Dominica, because in the same way, my parents only had 2 children, but my mom raised 7 children. Because like your parents, my aunts moved on to Guadeloupe and New York for greener pastures to help the family. And in the meantime, my mom stayed in Dominica to raise the children. So it just seemed natural at the time that that's the way things were done.
Yes, it was. And I'm just kind of amazed at how they did it.
Yes, me too.
Because today I think it'd be so hard.
Yeah, because I think to myself, like up here, because I'm in Georgia, we have so much more resources. But I'm thinking to myself, would I really have taken on 5 of my sister's children? in addition to my own child to raise, I don't know. It was a special time, I think.
It was. I really think so.
Yes, and they did it with so
It
much
was special.
less. They did it with so much
Yes,
less. Yeah, but it certainly builds character.
it does.
Yes, yes.
It
So,
makes you appreciate a lot.
yes, yes. And I see you've had several careers. You were a police officer, you were a reporter, you were a nurse. Now, just tell us about that journey. Were those by choice or just circumstances? You needed a job and that's where you landed?
No, each one was by choice.
By choice.
I was looking for this I had this set of rules that I lived my life by, 5-year plans.
Mm-hmm.
When I graduated SMA, the St. Mary's Academy, at 16, my first job was at the Royal Bank of Canada. I working in foreign exchange. But after about a year of that, I thought, yeah, that could be a good career. You could make money, but it was boring as heck.
I can
I'm like,
imagine.
no, this is too boring. This is too boring. Just, I like to be outside. I don't like to be cramped up in a room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I left that and joined the police force because it was more adventurous. And in the police force, we did a lot of great things. You know, we were involved in the regional security force that went to Grenada after Prime Minister Maurice Bishop was executed. So we went with the U.S. Forces to liberate Grenada.
Impressive. Mm-hmm.
And we were in the SSU, the Special Service Unit in Dominica. People used to call it the drug squad, but it was much more than that. It was Dominica's security. We protected the Prime Minister. A lot of us worked right at her house, ate at her house with Miss Charles when she was Prime Minister. And so we kind of helped to save the country we know today as Dominica. And that's a story that I think needs to be told because there was so much turmoil and chaos in Dominica at that time. With the attempted coup and all those things that were going on in the island, you know, it was a really tough time, but I can just imagine what would have happened if the police had gone along with the disbanded defense force who were trying to take over the island with the Ku Klux Klan and this nonsense. But you know, so got a lot of great things I can say done in the police force with the guys. I learned a lot from them. We had very good leaders. About 5 years in, my 5-year plan, I'm still a constable. I'm like, that's not working out. I like it, but I do not want to retire as a senior constable. My thing is, I need to be up in those ranks, heading towards commissioner of police. And that wasn't happening. So I left that and went to DBS. There met, so if you notice with each one of those, I'm going to show you the ladder that's building and what's happening at each point.
But it just seems like they're so separate, right? You would think you would have gone from like police officer to maybe law, but you went from police officer to broadcasting and then nursing.
Yes, but you see, and that is where sometimes we don't understand fully what's happening, but you're building a toolkit that you're going to need later. In the police force, law and order and discipline. At the radio station, news reporting and announcing, you have to be creative. You have to be able to communicate effectively, not just communicate, but communicate effectively, and that what you put out to the public is factual. It's fact-based.
Right.
quite unlike a lot of the nonsense we hear today with
Yeah.
lies from
Yeah.
politicians and others.
Mm-hmm.
Real journalists go after the truth. We don't care about party, we don't care about whatever, we just follow the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And in journalism we learned that a story is like an onion. The more you peel, the more layers you uncover, and the more tears anyway sometimes with onion.
Uh-huh.
But the diligence. So I enjoyed working at DBS with people like Steinberg Henry, Rudy Joseph, Felix Henderson, Ted Daly, all Charmaine Green, those Johnson, John Rose, those came later, but we had such a team there, Tim Duran and the rest. I mean, it was an exciting time for me being around these people because I grew up listening to a lot of them on the radio. But their professionalism, and people like Steinberg Henry, we would sit outside the radio station before newscast, and he would talk. He would just that deep philosophy about stuff, right? And we would just enjoy that. So after that, I immigrated to the United States, to St. Thomas, Virgin Islands, to meet my family, and there worked on the radio again. And the person who was the news director at the radio station who hired me was none other but our former Calypso King Shaky.
Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. I know
That
that
was
name.
my news director at
Interesting.
WCOD in St. Thomas. So we became friends. We had known each other, but we became friends then, and played music and stuff together.
Mm-hmm. And then from there,
But
you went into nursing?
then I wanted to go to music school,
Mm-hmm.
but then the school was taking too long to respond. So I joined the military.
Mm-hmm.
In the Army, I joined as a combat medic, parachutist, jumping out of planes. So I got to see a lot of things, and we got to being assigned to Fort Bragg, which is home of the airborne and home of the special forces. We were right away deployed to Panama to get rid of arrest Manuel Noriega and liberate Panama in Operation Just Cause. Soon after we in Just Cause, we were in the medical team, so we set up the hospitals and set up the clinics and treated both Panamanian and American wounded troops. Soon after we got back, it wasn't even 6 months. We were back in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, to take care of Saddam Hussein out in the first Gulf War. Now, superstition took over, right? After that, I decided, you know what, all this airborne and high-speed stuff, I need to slow down. I need to go to school, because that was part of the reason I need to focus back on what I got into the Army for and what I got up here for, to school. So I went to Georgia Military College, and then I went to nursing school in the Army. Well, I went to nursing school in the Army first, then went to Georgia and went to Georgia Military College. And then it was in nursing school that I learned not only the compassion and everything else to do with nursing, the caring, but the science that I do today. That is where I got the inspiration for science.
And I want to talk to you a little bit more about this, but for anyone who's just joining us, we're speaking to Dr. Swinburne Augustine. He's out in Ohio, and he's an award-winning Dominican who is a microbiologist and an immunologist. So did you ultimately know that you wanted to be a microbiologist, immunologist, or was it just the path just sort of led you in that particular direction?
in nursing school, this one instructor that we had, and sometimes people, teachers and people don't know what impact they're having on someone's lives when they do certain things or say certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes maybe they do, but the students don't get it. So this one instructor, every time we would, during our rotations in the hospital, we would have several different patients, but each patient have different conditions, and we would follow that patient all day, during our rotation, and go around, shadow the nurses, the RNs, and other nurses who were taking care of that patient that day. We would do most of the care under their guidance because we hadn't had our licenses yet. We were still students. This one instructor, he told us, whenever we wrote our patient reports, he would like us to write them describing the patient's condition and their treatment at the molecular level.
What?
Yes. And we like, man, we in nursing school. We ain't trying to be doctors. What the hell are you trying
Right.
to
That's
tell?
what I was thinking too. You just need to diagnose the patients and keep it moving.
We just need to treat them.
Yes,
We
treat
don't
them.
even diagnose
Yes,
as
treat
nurses.
them. Right, treat
Yes, the
them.
medical doctors, the physicians do that.
Right.
But so a lot of people were kind of upset. I mean, yeah, because we had never really heard that stuff. And this man is telling us to go inside of the cell at the DNA, RNA level to describe what's going on. So it was a real task, but the only place we could get that information is not like today. I could get it on my phone in the palm of my hands and Google anything. We had to go to the medical library at the hospital on Fort Bragg. And there I started to see the patterns, go inside the cell and see what's happening with diabetes, what's happening with lupus, what's happening with autoimmune diseases inside at the cellular level. And I'm like, man, this is amazing stuff. Just in one cell, and it happens in other cells, and you get conditions. And it really interested me. So I went on to major in biology and chemistry. And then this one, I didn't know which direction to go. After being a critical care nurse and emergency room nurse for 14 years, I didn't like it anymore. I didn't like it because life had changed. I was on the fence when medicine and healthcare was changing from non-profit to for-profit. We could see, as nurses, we could see the effect on us because the workload became more, patient care became less, and the level of care we were giving to patients were just not adequate. We had too many patients. We were overwhelmed with the number of patients. It was more for profit, and that kind of didn't sit well with me because my whole nursing career, my motto was, I want to take care of every single patient the way I would take care of my grandmother who raised me.
Absolutely.
And if I cannot do that, then I don't need to be in that field. And that's why I left. And I didn't even want to be in medicine either. Mm-hmm. So I asked one of my professors, the chair of the biology and science department at Trevecca Nazarene University, Dr. Anne Fuqua. Nice lady, the late, she passed away, that's sad. She called herself my educational mother. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That lady taught me more than, and she was a white lady, mm-hmm. and they are nice ones. Mm-hmm. Dr. Fuqua told me that I'm not a very good student for most teachers to evaluate students, because she said, no, students who get it and who get A's, they're not very challenging for teachers. She said they don't make good teachers. She said a good teacher is the one who can take a complex thing, a complex thought or concept, and break it down that the simplest person can understand,
Right.
and can take a failing student and turn them into an A student. All that to tell you that I was not a challenge for her, but the message she sent was that if you can take a complex thought and break it down so that the simplest person can understand, the street level person, then that makes you a success. And those things started to build. And she's the one who guided me into the PhD program. I didn't even know about it before. I thought you needed a master's to get to PhD. She said, no, you don't. And that's how I got into Meharry Medical College. And there, at each point again, you're learning something new. So military discipline, military patriotism, military, teamwork, because people die. Nursing, teamwork, people die if your team doesn't work well. And so the seriousness of teamwork, many people apply for jobs and they talk about, yeah, I'm great at teamwork, but what does that mean? That means if the person next to you don't do what they're supposed to do, either you or they die. It's that serious, or your patients die. So a lot of it's a confluence of influences from each one of those jobs that led me to here.
Yeah, so I think it's been a fascinating journey for you, because you've somehow taken all this variety of different careers, and you seamlessly integrated it into what you're doing right now. So can you tell us a little bit about your research interests at this point and some of your successes?
Yes. So in graduate school, one of the things that I've learned about me is that I can be very independent. I'm a very good follower, but I don't like to follow. I will explain that. In graduate school, you have a doctorate, so when you're doing your thesis work, there's a choice of subjects and areas you can choose to do your dissertation on.
Yes.
Most of the students that I was with, especially those in the lab that I chose my mentor from, most of them follow work that has been done before, so they just add to it. They've been studying this one, and in our thesis work, we were actually studying something called Chagas disease. It's in South America, and it is now coming global. Chagas disease is caused by a little bug called the kissing bug from all the way down South America, and there's no cure for it. As a matter of fact, it's called Chagas disease because the guy who found it, the scientist, he actually infected himself and died of it.
Oh my!
So he could, because of things like the Institutional Review Board and what had happened with the Nazis with studying humans and doing all kind of unethical things. So he just infected himself, so he could study the symptoms and everything else. But that thing is really bad. So Chagas, that's how they named the disease after him. So they had all these clones and all these DNA libraries and RNA libraries in the lab. And I screened about 50 of them. 50 of them look like all those things they've been published, and 49 of them look like all these different things. But there was one clone that's totally different from the rest. And it was interesting to me because it didn't look like anything anybody had published before. As a matter of fact, It was never published until I did.
Mm.
It was a protein on the surface of Trypanosoma cruzi, that's the bug, on the surface of the Trypanosoma cruzi that helps it to signal it to bind, just like the SARS-CoV virus. The spike proteins will bind to our receptors to get it to go into the cells, because they have to get into the cells for them to do their damage. Most of those obligate intracellular parasites. So I found a protein that is now being, I called it TC1, T Cruzi 1. I was gonna give it my name, but my mentor said no. Nah, man, no. Anyways, but that protein I made an antibody against it, and when we expose it to that antibody, it blocks it from entering our cells, and the immune system will destroy it.
Wow.
So that, and even if you are already infected, although they are infected inside of your cells, some of your cells, they must get out. They have to burst out to get into the bloodstream and then infect other cells. Well, when they get out of into the bloodstream, then the antibodies capture them and the immune system destroys them again. So it can work either as a vaccine or as a therapeutic. And that is what we're looking for. Exactly those two things we're looking for with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to do that, and it is now that TC1 it is being looked at as a potential vaccine candidate for Trypanosoma cruzi and Chagas disease.
Wow. So you actually, that actually will potentially lead to the vaccine.
Yes.
Right. So that's
Yep.
impressive.
That
You must be very proud of that.
Well, yes, that is. We just do those work. We don't even worry about the effects of it. We hope that at some point, let's say, if the world were concentrated on Chagas disease like they do COVID, Chagas disease would have been cured already.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I say that so when we come to talk about COVID, that's going to be important.
Yes, yes. Well, let's talk about COVID, because I think we have a basic understanding of what COVID is. But can you give us your perspective on what exactly is COVID disease, and then we can probably talk about the vaccine.
COVID is a disaster.
It is.
It's a disaster in many ways, and not just about the way we are handling it now. It is a disaster in that policymakers are sometimes too short-sighted. Because something doesn't affect the big developing countries, less funds are put into things that, like I just mentioned, Chagas disease in South America. There are people working on it in Brazil, the universities down there, they're focused on Chagas because that's their local area, right? So when the international community don't put enough effort into solving one thing, then it takes a long time for them to for the community to get into TC1 and say, okay, we can use that as a vaccine. Let's try it and let's do a concentrated effort. Also, it's a disaster in that in all research planning, we are always aware, both at the EPA and in other agencies and universities, research institutions, whenever they're doing the research planning, the future research planning, we are always looking at emerging pathogens.
Right.
Things in other places that are not here yet, and we want to study them to get to know in case something happens, right? When they stop the funding for those things, then when they do become epidemics and pandemics, by that time it's too late. Then we are behind the curveball, and that's when we have to try to do like scramble like we're doing with COVID now to find a vaccine or cure. So we need to be more cognizant that the few dollars we spend on trying to understand and prepare for those emerging pathogens will be nothing compared to the trillions of dollars we are spending today.
And we see it right now in the US with over 200,000 people infected. We're seeing what you're speaking about right now.
Yes. I mean, so much pain and so much suffering, you know, to each of those 270,000 people who have lost their lives, and the CDC is projecting another 250,000 more by February. That we are talking about more than 500,000 Americans alone.
But Dr. Augustine, let me ask you this though. How much of this is individual responsibility? Because when you hear how prolific this virus is, yet, you know, I call them selfish people, are still willing to travel, potentially exposing their elderly relatives to all of this. So how much of that number is actually personal responsibility because people simply have COVID fatigue and they want to just live their lives and take the chances?
There is a certain level of irresponsibility. Whether it's for political or religious reasons, or just plain ignorance or distrust. I think each of us have a responsibility to care for each other. Again, growing up in a village where I said everybody looked out for the kids and looked out for each other. If I wear a mask, it's not making me less handsome, more ignorant, more stupid. I am just wearing that mask so that if I am exposed, when I cough into the mask, then most of the particles will stay in there. The other person, same way. And so the severity of COVID-19 is based, and studies are showing that is based on the number of viral particles that you take in, you're exposed to, and the contact time. That's why they say stay 6 feet apart, wear a mask, and try to not be, especially in indoor locations, for more than 15 minutes around somebody who's exposed. So it's just plain irresponsible. It's irresponsible for political leaders. It is irresponsible for anyone to think that it's okay to not wear a mask and not social distance. I don't see the fascination. Is a football game worth your life or my life? It's not. It's not.
And I think one of the reasons we're seeing those numbers where we could potentially have another 250,000 people infected with this is also because you know, we hear stories of people being on their dying beds and still thinking this is a hoax.
Yes.
So how do you reverse that mentality? I mean, in my mind, as somebody with a background in psychology, I'm at a loss of words in terms of how do you convince people that this is not a hoax?
Well, if leadership is influence, right? The definition of leadership is the ability to influence people to do things that you know needs to be done, even if they don't know it needs to be done. What happens when that leadership is contrary to public health?
You have a disaster.
Okay, and that's what we have, and that's as far as I can go with this. But all I know is that COVID-19 is not concerned about politics. It doesn't care about how much money you have. It doesn't care about whether you're rich or poor. It doesn't care whether you're black or white or green or yellow. If you're infected, you have a 50-50 chance that you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who wants to take that chance with their life. And it is a shame that we can tell political parties now based on people who wear masks and not.
Certainly unfortunate. And I want to also speak with you about the vaccine, but for anyone who's just joining us, we're speaking to biomedical researcher, Dr. Swinburne, Augustine, and he's telling us all about the importance of taking the COVID-19 virus seriously and to follow the protocols so we can eventually eliminate this disease from our society. So let's speak a little bit about the vaccine, Dr. Augustine. What are your thoughts about it? Because I think for most people, what they're concerned about is how quickly the vaccine was created and if it is in fact a healthy thing to submit yourself to at this point.
So, I have fielded that same exact question personally on the phone with a bunch of family members and friends, yes, a bunch of times this week alone.
Yes.
What people don't understand is this. First of all, let me explain what a vaccine is and how it works.
Please do.
And then we can talk about it.
Please do.
So, and how it's created. So a vaccine is just either before they would take a virus like the flu and kill it, or we call it attenuate it, or in some chemically treat it. But we need the proteins on that virus to remain, or that bacterium, whatever it is, to remain in its normal form, right? Its physiological form, so that because proteins fold when so the antibodies recognize those folds. It recognizes them in a certain orientation. If you destroy that orientation, the antibodies cannot bind. Mm-hmm. Or they'll bind weakly and then it won't be effective. So we take pieces of the protein, and if you look at the SARS virus, you see those spikes all on top of the surface. Well, those are spike proteins. They're literally called spike proteins, the S proteins, and those are very immunogenic to the body. Right, the immune system recognizes it and will make antibodies against it. Also, there is another protein called the receptor binding domain. That's an area of the virus that binds to our receptors. When they bind to the receptors on our cells, the ACE2, angiotensin converting enzyme 2 receptors on our cells, when they bind to that, they signal the cell, and the cell opens the door, and then lets them in. So now the enemy done went into our cells, releases it, mRNA. It's RNA because it's an RNA virus, a single strand of RNA with all the instructions on that single strand to make everything that the virus needs to package itself and to propagate itself and burst out and go back and do the same thing over and over again. You see, every time they do that, they're destroying our cells, but they're bursting out and using our cells' machinery. So now we would take those proteins that we know that are immunogenic and find a vehicle to help us inject it into humans. Not the whole virus, just the pieces of protein that are immunogenic, that the body make antibodies strongly against. Mm-hmm. Usually, The whole process to get that, we try it in animals first to see if we get the immune response and measure the antibodies, and then infect them and see if they fight off that infection. Then we go to a phase 1. They apply to the FDA for, they want to do clinical trials. They start their clinical trials with about 100 people. Some get the vaccine, others don't. And they look, but they monitor them closely. And they look for the effect. If that effect, if 98% of the people who got, or whatever number they determine is okay. But I'm just saying, if 98% of the people, of the 198 of them, they got the vaccine, then they infected them and they're okay, then, okay, we move to phase 2. Then we try it on about 1,000 people. And then you go on to 30,000, 100,000. You know, that's the phase 3 clinical trials. And at every stage, the scientists and the clinicians are looking at the data and determining side effects and all those things. So people are saying that it's too short a time.
Yeah, it's too quick.
Imagine, and my answer to this is that simple. Imagine all of the builders, the world's expert builders and architects and financiers and carpenters and masons, and that whole building, that whole industry is focused only on your building your house. How long do you think it would take them?
2 days.
Okay. And it is for real. If you had all these builders and all these experts in-house building with all the materials they need, I guarantee you will get it in a short period of time. The same way, when COVID shut down the entire world, you had, and that I like to say that because I need people to understand where their values are and what it is they worship or they spend time with. I know entertainment is great. I love my cricket and I love, sports and music. But all these music stars and all these sports stars and all this rest, they're still sitting at home or having problems playing in empty fields because people still want the entertainment. But there's another group of people, though, from the beginning of COVID have been focused like lasers on just solving that problem because we want to go back to normal. And these scientists and public health folks and the frontline physicians and nurses, we are focused on trying to solve this problem. Mm-hmm. So much information has been gathered over those past few months about every part of the cell, every part of the body that COVID-19 is affecting and how. And there's still some things that there are lots of questions that need to be answered. And one of them is very pressing, especially for me. It's the asymptomatic people, the mm-hmm. people who don't have symptoms. Mm-hmm. What kind of damage did it do inside of you that you're not seeing the effects yet?
Right.
But you will at a later time.
Right.
The US military thought about that. And at one point, and I'm talking about all the US military, they did not want to take COVID-infected people because they don't want to be left standing holding the bag when these kids show up later on after a few years in military service with something they didn't have, mm-hmm. and then the military had to pay the disability when those things start showing up. a lot of people don't realize that, but there's a lot of damage that those even if you don't see the symptoms now, we don't know what kind of damage it's doing, and that's very concerning. And you'll hear scientists say that.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying to us is we have to take precaution, because you may be asymptomatic, have the disease, and then it may create other problems for you down the road that you had not anticipated because you never had the symptoms of COVID-19.
Right.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And especially thank you for that example, Dr. Augustine. That was such a powerful example of all the builders of the world and all the architects of the world coming together to create your own house, because I think it kind of solidifies for us what the effort was put into the vaccines to get it ready for us in a more timely manner than a typical vaccine. So as we get ready to wind up, unfortunately, we only have an hour for the program, but I think there's so much more we could talk about, and I hope that you will join us again, either to talk about COVID or some other health concern. I wanted to congratulate you on your award, the Caribbean American Heritage Award that you received. So I wanted to congratulate you on being a recipient of that award. And just tell us, were you nominated? How did that process occur?
Thank you. It was really a weird way. I didn't know about it. I didn't even know about the institute. I didn't know about that award. I didn't know anything about it. And one Saturday night, I'm coming back from running and sweaty, and my cell phone rings, and I answer it, and it's like, "Hi, I'm Dr. Claire Nelson, and with ICS." I'm like, okay. And I generally don't answer calls that I don't recognize, because there's so many scams going on, you know. So I just answered, and she said, "Yeah, we've been researching you. We've been, and we were looking, we're the Institute of Caribbean Studies, and we do the Caribbean American Heritage Awards every year. And these are the kind of people that we have been giving these awards to," like when she said Rita Marley and Cicely Tyson and Jimmy Cliff, and people that I knew. I'm like, wow, okay.
Wow.
Yeah, so I said, okay, yes. And she said, yeah, we were looking for a Caribbean American scientist who was working at a very high level and making a global impact on COVID. And we came across you and Googled you, and blah, blah, blah.
Wow. Fascinating.
It
Fascinating.
was, yeah.
Well, congratulations and continued success with the work that you do. And do you have any final thoughts for us as we get ready to sign off?
Yes. I would like to wish everybody a safe and happy holidays. I know the holiday season is coming. But it's here, not coming. It is really here. We're in December. And so Thanksgiving was a bit of a drag because people can't be with their families. The CDC and other health organizations are begging people to please try to limit your travel and try to be with the people in your immediate household, to try to limit the spread, because after Thanksgiving, I think in the next week or so, we will start to see the effects of those people who traveled for Thanksgiving. A lot of people, I don't know if it's worth our lives for a Christmas party or for a New Year's party. There will be other Christmases and there will be other New Year's if we protect ourselves and protect each other. So I would just say wear your masks, social distance, and the mask. I want to give another analogy about the mask before we go.
Yes, please.
Because I saw that and it made so much sense. If two men standing, and both of them, one is not wearing pants and the other one is wearing pants. If the one without the pants pees, he'll pee on the pants, the other person's pants.
Mm-hmm.
If none of you have pants, then he's peeing on your leg. If both of you have pants on and that man pees, he's peeing inside his pants.
Yep.
It will never touch you.
Yep.
That is why we wear the masks.
Mm-hmm.
It is exactly the same thing. If both of us are wearing the mask, the percentage of the risk of you getting infected is very low.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very low. Versus one person, it's lower. It's low, but not as low if both have it. If none of you have it, the chances are very high that you will get infected. So that is all. That's the mask is to, and by wearing the mask and social distancing, we are giving those poor healthcare people, the physicians and the nurses and the technicians in the hospitals, a breather.
Mm-hmm.
We're not overwhelming the hospitals with all of us getting sick at the same time. We're giving them a bad way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Because my eldest daughter is an emergency room physician.
Mm-hmm.
I know they don't want to have to make that choice of life and death and who to treat and who deserves care and not. And the only way they can do that is by us helping them out by using all masks and social distancing. That's about the way we can help until a vaccine and a cure comes. That's the way that's what we should do to protect ourselves, our families, or villages, or countries, or communities.
Well, certainly. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Augustine, for being with us, for educating us, for reassuring us about the vaccine. And if I might add, your education mother, like you call her, would be so proud of the way you were able to break down the information to the man on the streets. I certainly have no experience in medicine, but I understood what you were saying. And thank you for being with us here on Untapped Potential. And we look forward to staying connected with you and to having you share some more with us.
Anytime.
All right, take care.
My pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.